is Robin Jackson, a person who has become very special to us here at Freedom Central, because as some may know, Robin, who is also the owner of Expanding Mind Publishers, an up-and-coming publishing company which is based in my hometown of Durban, South Africa. And apart from writing and publishing two of his own works, as well as having a third book in the works, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Mel. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, you're most welcome. We just want to share a little bit about your journey. And
I'm a former Jehovah's Witness, and I basically grew up in the religion, or cult, so to speak. Basically baptized at the age of 13, and all through my teenage years started questioning a lot of the doctrines, a lot of the issues around their teachings, and I think basically at the age of 15 was the first alarm bell that started going off in my little teenage head,
yeah,
as to the doctrine, how people were being treated within the organization, and this actually led me on my specific journey to do independent research, because as you know, a lot of these groups, they frown on independent research being done by their members. You're only allowed to research and read literature that is approved by the organization and only comes from the organization. And I was a little bit of a rebel with regards to that, because I started doing a lot of independent research on my own, and that was when all the hidden facts came out, and I met up with a lot of former Jehovah's Witnesses who shared the very same experiences and concerns that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And that eventually led me to exit, or basically leave the organization, and I started doing a lot of research with regards to the whole cult issue in general. And I started doing research on not only Jehovah's Witnesses and their origins, but a lot of the other so-called cults as well, like your Mormons and your Unification Church. And so basically in a nutshell, that was my little journey, and eventually led me to writing my two books. The cult issue in South Africa is one that's very close to my heart, and that I try and expose as much as possible, because South Africans in general are very naive to this phenomenon. If you look at the rest of the world, apart from I'm sure about the US and the UK, there's a lot of independent organizations that go about educating people on the issue and the dangers of a lot of these organizations. And I mean, we can only mention, Freedom Central does a brilliant job as well. But South Africans in general, they are very naive to the problem, and it is a huge, huge issue in South Africa. And my work with regards to that is exposing and educating a lot of the public with regards to their recruitment techniques used by these groups, how they go about recruiting members, how dangerous being affiliated to a lot of these groups are, how families are broken up, and in some instances also where it leads to death in a lot of cases. And specifically mentioned the Jehovah's Witness and their blood doctrine. So my work, using my books, so to speak, in educating a lot of people around South Africa with regard to the issue, their recruitment techniques, what to look out for, how to avoid being recruited, and how to, and especially when it comes to young people, because young people are basically their targets. And a lot of young people at the age where they try and make sense of their place in the world and their surroundings, and what am I doing here, where am I going, all the age-old questions. And a lot of these cults come with so-called authoritative answers to these questions, which look very appealing to young people, and that's how a lot of them are drawn in. So my work is basically based on educating the broader public in South Africa. Jehovah's Witnesses, any member of the Jehovah's Witnesses are not allowed to accept blood transfusions,
Okay.
to the point of where they, where they're on their deathbed. The organization forbids their members to accept blood transfusions because of a scripture in the Bible that they interpret as including blood transfusions, and not only the drinking of blood, but they categorize blood transfusions within that, in the meaning of the scripture. So you can imagine the amount of devastation when it comes to family members dying, little kids, children, especially dying in hospital beds from refusing blood transfusions.
Yeah.
And we've had first-hand experience of this because of very good friends and family members we've lost very good friends and family members due to this. That is one of the issues that plagued me and bugged me as a Jehovah's Witness growing up. How could a parent allow their child to die on an operating table because 12 men sitting in Brooklyn, New York, tells them to refuse blood transfusions?
Yeah.
So that's the whole issue about the Jehovah's Witnesses and the refusal of accepting blood transfusions. Which was interesting to me when I did a lot of research on especially the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, which I found out that a lot of the temple rituals, especially with the Mormons, and the origins of Jehovah's Witnesses are based in Freemasonry.
Yeah.
And a lot of the early writings and books and symbols that were used by the Jehovah's Witnesses founders, and especially the Mormons as well, you could actually see traces of and trace elements of Freemason symbology in a lot of the writings and the books. And a lot of if you show that to a Jehovah's Witness now or a Mormon, they'd say no, that cannot never be. But the evidence is there, and they refuse to accept it and to view such things because they're forbidden to look into the past history of these organizations.
Absolutely. And one of the very clear symbols is the watchtower, which very clearly links it to the past and the occult. I mean, that's one of the most obvious symbols. It goes back into the tarot. They go back thousands of years to ancient Egypt, the watchtower.
Absolutely. Yeah, the symbology thing was a big thing. I mean, the founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, his tombstone, Charles Taze Russell in Pennsylvania, is the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. So, what more evidence do you want?
There we go. Enough said. Thank you very much. How do you talk to people? And this is something that's, I don't want to go about scaring people. I don't want to alienate people. And really, it's difficult for myself to try and find that very delicate middle ground where you can approach people on these subjects. Robin, is there any advice you could give people who want to perhaps educate someone who are sensitive to these issues?
The brainwashing and the mind control is so strong in a lot of these groups that it takes sometimes years to get people out. I mean, it took me, if you look at my experience, it took me 25 years to get out of the Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's a very strong, the techniques that they use are very strong, I must admit. And the best advice that I could give members or people who have family members is to subtly and very, very, don't be very aggressive with your approach. A lot of these cults try to alienate their members from family, to cut off basically the information that family members can show them with regards to the wrongdoings of the cult. So I suggest slowly but surely just show one of the techniques that is advocated is to show members their past life, so to speak, within the family, how the family structure was upheld before they got involved with the cult. A technique they use is to invite them over and speak about past friends and family members that they've lost touch with. And now everybody's concerned about, the what's happening and so forth. So it's a very subtle technique. I must admit, there are people who specialize in this type of helping people out of cults. And I must admit, Mel, it's a very tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something with regards to techniques. You said the techniques are strong. And can you be more specific about this?
Well, a lot of the techniques, and one of the, I'll just touch on a few techniques that a lot of these cults use to recruit. And a lot of people know that Jehovah's Witnesses, and especially Mormons and a lot of other groups, they go from door to door, on a Sunday morning, trying to preach to people. But that is one of the techniques that gets used is your hyped meetings. A lot of these meetings that you get invited to by the group, you walk into these meetings, and all of a sudden it's everybody approaches you and welcome, and there's a sense of belonging, and you basically made to feel where have I been? What's wrong with this group? Look at me. There must be something wrong. Look at the loving environment that is happening here. But that's a technique they use, and it's called love bombing. And from my experience in the Jehovah's Witnesses, we were actually told from the platform that whenever we see a new face in the congregation, you should go up to these people and express your welcome and your concern, and encourage them to attend more meetings. It's a way of, as I said, the technique of love bombing is used, where it's overwhelming. It's an overwhelming experience when you go to these meetings. And then there's also the intense and unrelenting pressure that is used. They pressurize you on a weekly, sometimes on a daily basis. You get visitors, these people visiting you to study their literature, to come to the meetings. And before you know it, Mel, you caught up. You're part of the fold, and it's only later that you find out that the what they taught you at the beginning. Like for instance, I'll just make an example that a new recruit in the Jehovah's Witnesses is not taught about the blood transfusion issue. You only get taught or told about the refusal of blood once you are a member. If you knew this beforehand, you would run a mile.
Of course, because it interferes with your logic and survival instinct.
Absolutely. So it's very subtly done. I must admit, there's the techniques they use are so subtle, because you speak to people about these groups, and they'll tell you, oh, but they look so neat and tidy, and they're very good people. There's no doubt about that. But it's the techniques they use. They are told to recruit and to recruit for the bigger organization, and that's it.
Okay, so let me ask you something. They're told to recruit. Now, what ultimately is the purpose of having all these people? Is this to have little sheep that they can command to run around and do their dirty work? I don't understand what was the necessity to mind control and have in control a whole bunch of people under a certain doctrine. Is this underpinning, this obviously is underpinning a whole bunch of other secret societies that are pinged on top of it, but really, what do they ask people to do once they join these organizations?
Well, the new recruits are also made to, go out and recruit. So you get trained, and I must admit, especially Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, they do a very good job at training new recruits into becoming effective speakers. And I always tell people that that's the only good thing I took from the Jehovah's Witnesses is they trained me to be an effective speaker, public speaker. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So you get drawn in, you become a member, and of course the cycle continues. You get trained and told, go from house to house. You need to recruit because and Jehovah's Witnesses use the fear tactic of Armageddon. The earth will be destroyed. You've got to save as many people as you can. Bring them into the fold. And of course, the underlying motivation behind this is one of the underlying motivations is your money issue. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower Society, is a $1 billion corporation. I tell people now that the Watchtower organization is a publishing company masquerading as a religion. So,
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. So, to me, the underlying issue is recruit and bring as many in as possible because we need your dollars.
Yeah. I guess ultimately, we should have been not so naive and thought, yes, that's what it comes down to always, is making money. They don't pay any taxes as a religion.
Absolutely, yeah. And one interesting point with regard to that was a few years ago. Now, just to put you in the picture, that Jehovah's Witnesses see everybody outside of the religion, all organizations outside of the religion, as bad, and they are the only ones, the only true religion, right? So everybody, to be saved, so to speak, you've got to be a Jehovah's Witness. And this is the underlying thing with a lot of cults. They are the one true religion, so you've got to belong to that organization. And which was interesting at one stage when the American government took Jimmy Swaggart to the IRS, took Jimmy Swaggart to court because of tax evasion for selling DVDs and literature. And the Jehovah's Witnesses signed as friends of the court because they knew that if he gets nailed, of course the Watchtower organization will get nailed as well.
Yeah.
For selling their literature, yeah. And a tactic they used when Jimmy Swaggart was nailed for this was they subtly changed their approach, going from house to house, where they did not sell the magazines or the literature anymore because you got to pay tax on it. They now asked householders for a donation because donations are not taxed. So, yeah.
Very clever.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I suppose as well, I just think about going to church and then passing around the donation basket. And I used to go to church and I used to think, I really don't want to put money in, but if I don't put money in, they're going to look at me funny. And it is that whole, we keep each other in check through fear of what other people think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's a lot of that going around in the cult issue because people are told or encouraged, so to speak, to rat each other out. So there's this constant fear, within the organization amongst members that, I've got to toe the line because Mr. So-and-so next door will see what I'm doing and he will tell the elders I'll get into trouble. So there's this whole fear tactic that gets used within a lot of these cults. And that's one of the underlying techniques that they use as well, the fear tactic.
Yeah, and I guess this is the main primary mechanism behind, and I suppose the key unifying element behind all the control mechanisms that ultimately control humanity, and moving it towards sort of a very dark point. These cults certainly don't encourage personal freedom or expression at all.
No, absolutely. And I must admit, people always ask me, what's the difference between a cult and a religion? Now, I always tell people, look, there's a very thin line between...
Nothing. Sorry, I didn't say that.
I always tell people a religion, and I'm talking about Christianity. Let's just take Christianity, for example. And within Christianity as a religion, you could move from church to church and still be viewed as a Christian. And I'm saying somebody could move from being an Anglican to becoming a Roman Catholic or a Congregationalist church. But you're still viewed basically as a Christian because it's the belief system that matters.
Yeah.
However, within a cult, it's the organization that matters and not the belief system. So if you leave that particular cult, you are now seen as an apostate. You are, influenced by the devil. You're not, so to speak, Christian or whatever the case may be. You don't, So there is that very thin line. I mean, cults are they're much more exclusive in their approach, their doctrines. They use deception a lot, which is also one of their identifying marks, where the leaders, you're not allowed to speak up against the leaders because you would get in so much trouble. You're called into the back room.
Yeah.
And up over the knuckles. So that's one of the main identifying marks as well that people should look out for.
Something you just said, bringing Christianity into the fold of this, as far as I always understood, and I went to a Baptist church that was across the road from me because it was across the road, that sort of, Jesus loves all of us equally, so to speak. Why, I just don't understand, do the Jehovah's Witnesses actually teach a Christian doctrine whilst using that kind of exclusivity? I don't understand how it sort of reconciles with each other.
Yeah, they teach the basic Christian doctrine. However, it differs slightly from your mainstream Christianity doctrines. And just one of the issues that or teachings that the Jehovah's Witnesses differ on when it comes to mainstream Christianity is the fact that the Trinity, a lot of Christian religions teach the Trinity. The Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in the Trinity. They teach that Jesus was the Son of God, and of course their God is Jehovah. He's the Father, and the Holy Spirit is an active force. Whereas mainstream Christianity mainly teaches the Trinity, where the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit are this three entities in one. Another doctrine that the Jehovah's Witnesses differ on greatly with regards to when it comes in connection with Christianity is their doctrine of only 144,000 people go to heaven, while the rest will be living on a paradise earth. So, and that is something that the Jehovah's Witnesses and mainstream Christianity always headbutt on. They always come to blows with that, about the 144,000 people that only go to heaven. So they do teach, their doctrine is Christian based, and so to speak, as you say, Mel, it's supposed to be a doctrine of love, and but once you're in the organization, a lot of it is very, very far from the love message that Jesus spoke about in the Bible. So there is a big difference when it comes to that.
Are there actually people coming out being hurt by this organization? I mean, committing suicide, ending up in asylums, and all that sort of thing. I mean, this sounds like this can do some real damage.
It does. I must admit, a lot of people won't understand once you've been in there, and it does enormous amount of damage to families, to individuals as well. I've heard, and I know of suicides, and we've experienced that firsthand with very close friends of ours as well. And because of the brainwashing and the way you get cut off, so to speak, if a wrongdoing, if you caught out doing something wrong within their eyes and you disfellowshipped, they call it disfellowshipping, where you get kicked out of the organization. Your friends and your family members that are still in the organization are forbidden to speak to you. So instantly you are cut off from friends and family, and this can cause an enormous amount of damage, mentally as well. So there are many reports, Mel, on people who have committed suicide because of the issue of disfellowshipping, the instant cutting off of friends and losing family members. It really is a devastating blow to many young people as well. So because you must realize that you basically grow up. If you're growing up in the religion, you are basically within this bubble. You're brought up in a bubble, So you're forbidden to associate with people outside of the organization. And once you lose that, that's it. You got to start all over again, and some people find it hard.
Yeah, absolutely. How do they get into schools and put that kind of sort of? I would imagine there'd be more sort of caution within schools about letting cults into them. But when I was in school, and I went to a government school in Durban, there were loads of Jehovah's Witness kids in our schools, and I just was always very aware of how separated they were kept from them. And I was, again, also very aware of one of them who happened to be the daughter of our drama teacher, who had to drop out of school because she had such psychological problems. I don't understand how a school can go about sort of allowing a cult culture like that within a school and expect it to be a healthy, equal sort of environment where nobody's, being picked on or separated or marginalized.
I must admit, because of South Africa's, and I'm just talking about South Africa now, South Africa's constitution, it allows freedom of religion, expression, whatever the case may be. So basically, when it comes to a lot of these cults, because they're not seen as cults, so to speak, they are seen as religions. Purely because of the amount of followers they command. A lot of these, as I always say, take the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses. What started out as a little cult, has grown to such enormous amount of people belonging to this that they now are viewed as a mainstream religion. And this is where the problem comes in, because they're viewed as a mainstream religion. It is actually hard to actually basically touch them and raise these issues because of the enormity and the power that they command and hold, amongst the community sometimes. And a lot of times you find even within governments as well, you've got members from these organizations pulling strings. So it's the only thing that we can do, like myself, Lone Crusaders, together with some other South Africans, is just educate and warn people about the dangers of becoming involved with these organizations. So
Do you get invitations to schools to come speak about these things? Are schools actually now recognizing this, or where do you actually draw people to educate them?
Well, it's done by public talks, seminars at schools as well. About a year ago, we had quite a problem in the highway area here in Durban with a cult that was infiltrating your schools and actually shipping off kids to Mauritius, to their headquarters. And I was called in together with some other cult educators to look into the problem. And the parents of the schools that were targeted by this cult actually got together and formed a concerned parents group. And that is where we started, the education process and tackling this cult head on, because they were shipping off kids to Mauritius. Kids were forced to drop out of school, and they were also taught to recruit within school premises. And this became a problem at the schools because this started interfering with, normal school activity. So, schools are basically your starting point where a lot of these, where education should happen because, as I said before, these cults target young people, to recruit. And as I said, young people are at that age, especially school-going kids in high school, at that age where you're trying to make sense of the world. And these cults come with some pretty interesting and so-called authoritative answers to the problems that they are facing, and that's very easily drawn in. They're very easily drawn in.
Absolutely. And you know what's really sad about this, Robin, is that I think a lot of people who end up in these cults are sometimes some of the most well-meaning people, because they're generally those people who have some kind of a spiritual calling and they're searching and they get drawn into these things. And it's very much like, I say the same for doctors. Not all doctors, people go on about the pharmaceutical industry being so bad. And I say, a lot of doctors genuinely have a calling to be healers, but going into medicine is the only way they find to express that. It's the same thing with the cults, and it's always the very well-meaning people who end up getting the most hurt, and that's the sad thing. It's these people that we need to sort of be helping.
Absolutely. And Mel, I actually mentioned, the intro to my first book, because I knew I was going to get a lot of backlash from speaking out against such a huge organization.
Yeah.
And I used to, I mentioned, and I mention still today, that my gripe is not with the people, the rank and file within the organization. My gripe is not with these, the rank and file going from door to door and obeying the elders and the leaders. My gripe is with the leaders sitting in their high towers, and they are knowingly deceiving these people. So, yeah, that is my big gripe.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? They actually don't realize, nor do they care, the damage that they're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's you know, these are just, they're just seen as sheep brought into the fold, as you said, that they're sheep brought into the fold, and they will just follow whatever these leaders, command them to do. And it's so sad to see. It really is.
I've got a question that's come up here, Robin, that I thought I'd field to you and maybe take it as well. But a gentleman by the name of Ryan is a fellow South African. He wants to know if movements like the Zeitgeist movement or Occupy can be seen as cults. I've got an opinion, but I'll let you go first.
Look, my experience, I must admit, I haven't dealt too much with the Zeitgeist and the Occupy movements. I've looked at, I've watched it, and I've watched it from a distance, just to form my little opinion of what's happening there. I look at those people, Mel, and fair enough, as you say, there are the people at the bottom who are fighting to expose, the wrongs that a lot of these governments are doing. It is sad to say that a lot of these people are actually manipulated by hidden or you could call it hidden forces, so to speak.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because fair enough, they see the wrongs and the issues that are that need to be addressed within countries, within governments, or so to speak. But to me, a lot of it is orchestrated, I must admit. It's just, but that's my opinion on it. A lot of it is orchestrated. Yeah.
I agree, and I'll be honest with you, and I've said this many times, as much as I support the whole Occupy that happened in South Africa, I think Occupy Wall Street and Occupy London didn't exist. It was very co-opted. I've put in loads of proof across in articles I've written. I've spoken about this before, and I do believe it was co-opted. I do believe it was planned with certain intent. We can prove it with regards to following the money line and where the money's going. People won't show who the signatories on the accounts are. What I will say is that I don't think they expected or anticipated what would happen, and that a whole bunch of other people would go, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do that too, and they have.
Absolutely.
And we love them for it, and I must just say, I did a big show on this last week with regards to the people in Rondebosch Common, and my heart really goes out to these people. I've got so much respect for each and every one of these protesters who stood in front of these white Caspers and just tried, even if it was them on their own, tried to walk across the common to, and this is my freedom right of choice, and they were arrested. I think when we look at these people, we have to bear in mind, and it's a good question, Ryan, actually, we have to bear in mind that there is a genuine struggle on the ground, and people will always try to infiltrate something that's true and good to covert it. And
that is so true.
Yeah, and I guess it's the same for most religions as well. I think ultimately all religions, and I've done this in my work, I've traced all religions back to one source, but that source actually is a ubiquitous duality of both light and dark, and it can be used in both directions. And what we've been separated from is understanding how this works together, but also how to make the choice so that we're always working for the benefit of the whole. And one of the things I find religions and cults tend to do is really create this separatist identification where they cut you off from the rest of the world. And this breeds insecurities within us because, when we're not connected, we don't feel the support.
That's it. Yeah. Interesting issue, point is with regards to, especially with cults and religious cults, is the control, the time, not only the mind control that they use as a technique, but also controlling people's time. cults keep their members so busy with activities and meetings that the members do not actually have the time to think about their involvement within the group. This keeps them away from their family and friends, and keeps them immersed in that environment. You look at, and I'm just speaking from the Jehovah's Witness point of view. We were, when I was a witness, and witnesses today still are required to attend 5 meetings a week.
Wow.
Which takes up a lot of your time, because you've got to prepare for all those meetings. So you're kept so busy with their literature, studying their literature, because if you've got to attend all these 5 meetings, that you don't have time to think of anything else. And that's one of the ways that they control their members as well, and keep their members in check. So, that's a huge issue as well.
Robin, you've come a really long way, and you've obviously, done the whole complete process of healing. And this is, something I've been talking about with a lot of people recently, is that there's a lot of people who've actually got to come to terms with the fact that they've been doing the wrong thing. It's not their fault, because we've been very craftily manipulated, and we've got to come to the point where they go, okay, now we've got to make a decision about where to go forward from here. Give me a little bit about your outlook and how you feel about the things going forward.
Yeah, I must admit, Mel, coming out of the religion, and I look back at my experience coming out of the Jehovah's Witnesses and the cults, I went into a sort of depression because of your research, and you find out that you've been lied to, in my case, for 25 years of my life. I've been lied to. I've been advocating and putting the organization or the cult's interests first before my own. And that put me into a depression, so to speak. However, what I did was, I looked back at all that 25 years of experience within the cult, and I turned it around. I said, right, you taught me to speak publicly. I'm going to use that to educate people on how you recruit and how you manipulate. So I can use that experience to the good, to help people to get out, to show people that if there are any members, cults who are stuck in there and who see this is, look at the deception and battling to get out of this, I can help people now and say, look, you're not alone. Look at my experience. Look at this guy's experience next to me. We've been there, we've done it, but we've turned it to the greater good. We've turned it where we now help people to realize that they're not alone. There are support mechanisms out there, and it's not the end of the world, so to speak. When you decide to cut ties with the cult, and you lose, fair enough, you lose friends and family, but there are support systems for you.
Absolutely. And, not just talking about cults, we're talking about a cut from any lifestyle that is not good for you, so to speak. And I draw this back into what I was saying earlier with my information earlier, is that, a cult culture is what we live in. And, Robin, you've published my book. You know how I talk about my career in media, and how, to me, that was like my time in the Jehovah's Witnesses, where I was so obsessed with a certain idea that I was, poisoning myself.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. That we are bombarded on a daily basis by the images that we see projected through mainstream media, television, the magazines, and as you say, Mel, you're absolutely right. That is, we are in a cult culture, because and you speak to a lot of people, a lot of friends. I sit around, when I have visitors and friends over, and you speak to people about your viewpoint now, and it's eye-opening to a lot of people, because they didn't see it that way, and I said, look, just look a little bit deeper into the whole issue, and there are underlying motivations behind what's happening, in the world, in religion, within government, within the whole monetary system. So there are underlying issues that are covered up, so to speak.
And on that note, I want to say, do you know what? Much respects to you for coming out and writing about it, and also for starting a little publishing company and being so proactive about getting information to people. You know, as I said, I've felt from the beginning, you know, kindred spirits on this journey of having to get the information out. And, you know, you've done it through your experience in your way with your books. And I just wanted to mention, if anyone goes onto the Expand Your Mind Publishers website, where I've been advertised for my books, you can see Robin's got some other books listed there. Losing the Faith. Talk to me quickly a little bit about that one.
Losing the Faith was the first book. Losing the Faith, Truth Under Scrutiny, was basically my journey from a young boy through the Jehovah's Witnesses up to the point where I left 25 years later. So it chronicles, you know, my journey out of the organization, my research, the little alarm bells that went off, and a lot of the issues that I had within the organization. So it's quite an interesting read for people who would like to know the inner workings of the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's quite an interesting read. And then the second one, which was Cults, How They Work, is where I actually show you the recruitment techniques that are used by so many of these organizations, and how similar they are in their recruitment techniques, their brainwashing techniques, and you know, how they keep people within their ranks, and how people actually are so scared to leave because of the effectiveness of their doctrines and the way they keep people in. So yeah, if anybody would like to, as you say, Mel, it's on the website. People can go to my personal website as well. It's robinjackson.co.za and read more about this whole cult issue there.
Brilliant. Robin, are you working on a third book now at the moment as well?
Yes, I am. I can give you a bit of information on the third one.
Yes.
It's called Exit Wounds, and it's basically chronicles, each chapter is dedicated to a individual who's left a certain organization and the effects it's had on himself or that person and family members, and how he's turned his life around to the greater good. So it's going to prove to be a very interesting read as well.
Beautiful. So you've actually gone around collecting stories of people.
That's correct, yeah.
You know, that's kind of like what I've done with Freedom Central, which again is probably one of the reasons why we kind of connected. Well, how we found each other. We've both been on this journey collecting stories that we can share with the world.
It's amazing how the universe works. It's just, you know, when you just that connection. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Thank you very much for joining us and contributing to our information archives.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.